The massive alien ships appeared above Earth, like dark storm clouds blocking out the sun. Admiral Kyung-ho Kim stood on the bridge of humanity's biggest warship, the Indomitable, watching through the viewport as more and more enemy vessels materialized from hyperspace. Each one was easily 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. "Sir, we're counting over 300 ships," reported his tactical officer, sweat beading on his forehead. "And more keep coming." Kyung-ho nodded grimly. They had known. This day would come eventually. For the past 50 years, humanity had been expanding outward from Earth, establishing colonies on distant worlds. They had always wondered when they would meet someone else out there in the darkness of space. Now they had their answer. Communications Officer Minna Park turned from her station, her face pale. "Admiral, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. The message is being transmitted to every human world simultaneously." "Put it through," Kyung-ho ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that looked like it had stepped out of humanity's worst nightmares. Tall and imposing, with scaled skin that shimmered like oil and eyes that glowed with an inner fire. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Primitive creatures of the third planet," the alien commander began. "I am High Commander Veltharos of the Valthran Empire. For 3,000 years we have brought order to this galaxy. We have united over 1,000 species under our rule." Kyung-ho felt his blood run cold. 1,000 species. How many worlds did that represent? How many billions of lives? The alien continued, "You will now join this great unity. You have 2 choices, as all species before you have had. First, you may kneel willingly. Accept our rule, become our vassals, and your transition will be peaceful. Your leaders will be allowed to govern under our guidance, and your people will serve the Empire's greater purpose." Several of the bridge crew exchanged worried glances. It didn't sound like the worst fate that could befall them. "So your second choice," Veltharos went on, his voice growing colder, "is to resist. If you choose this path, we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. We will burn your worlds, scatter your fleets, and hunt down every last member of your species, until none remain to remember that humanity ever existed." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Sir," Minna said quietly, "we're receiving priority communications from the Terran Defense Coalition headquarters. President Jae-sung Lee wants to address the fleet commanders immediately." Within minutes, the faces of humanity's military leaders appeared on screens around the bridge. President Lee looked tired but determined as he began to speak. "By now, you've all seen the alien ultimatum," he said. "I've been in contact with the colonial governors and military commanders across all our worlds. We've spent the last 6 hours in emergency session discussing our response." Kyung-ho could see the weight of the decision in the president's eyes. This wasn't just about Earth anymore. Humanity had spread to dozens of worlds with millions of civilians who couldn't defend themselves. "The choice seems obvious," continued one of the colonial governors via hologram. "We can't fight something like that. Look at their fleet size, look at what they're claiming about their empire. Maybe vassalage wouldn't be so bad." "Would it?" asked Admiral So Young-han from the Mars defense station. "Has anyone stopped to think about what happens to a species that becomes a vassal of an empire this size? We become servants. Our children grow up as servants. Our children's children never know what it means to be free." President Lee raised his hand for silence. "The debate is over. We've made our decision as a united human government. Admiral Kim, please open a channel to the alien fleet." Kyung-ho felt his heart pounding as the communications array powered up. Whatever they were about to do would determine the fate of every human being alive. High Commander Veltharos appeared on screen again, clearly expecting humanity's surrender. Behind him, Kyung-ho could see other alien officers, all wearing expressions of bored confidence. This was routine for them. Just another species to be absorbed into their empire. President Lee's voice came through clearly as he delivered humanity's response to the galaxy. "High Commander Veltharos of the Valthran Empire, we have considered your offer carefully. We choose neither of your options. We choose to fight." For the first time in the conversation, the alien's composure cracked. His glowing eyes widened, and he leaned forward as if he hadn't heard correctly. "That is not possible," Veltharos said slowly. "You misunderstand the situation. No species has ever chosen a third option because no third option exists. It exists now, President Lee replied, firmly. Humanity refuses to kneel. The alien commander's face twisted with something between rage and disbelief. In 3 millennia of conquest, this had never happened. Every species, when faced with the Empire's might, had chosen submission over extinction. Then you have chosen. For extinction, Veltharos snarled, cutting the transmission. As the screen went dark, Kyung-ho looked around at his crew. They were terrified, but there was something else in their eyes too. Pride. They were about to face impossible odds, but they would face them as free human beings. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin. Captain Sung-min Choi gripped the controls of his fighter so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Through his cockpit window, he could see the massive Valthran fleet forming up for their attack on Earth. Each of their ships looked like floating cities, bristling with weapons that humanity had never seen before. Phoenix Squadron, this is. Phoenix, leader, he spoke into his comm system. Remember what we discussed in the briefings. We're not trying to win a fair fight here. Fair fights are for people who have a choice. His squadron of 20 fighters was part of Earth's last line of defense. Behind them, the planet held 4 billion people who were counting on them to buy enough time for the evacuation shuttles, to get the children to safety. Phoenix, leader, this is Control, came Admiral Kyung-ho's voice through the static. Enemy fleet is beginning their approach. You are cleared to engage at your discretion. Sung-min took a deep breath. He had been a fighter pilot for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. All units execute Operation Hornet's Nest. Remember, we're not playing by their rules anymore. The human fleet broke apart in ways that would have horrified any military academy instructor. Instead of maintaining formation and engaging in traditional space combat, they scattered like a swarm of angry insects. Every ship moved independently, unpredictably, using tactics that seemed almost insane. Lieutenant Hyojin Nam piloted her destroyer, the Defiant Spirit, directly toward the enemy flagship. Her ship was tiny compared to the alien vessel, but that was exactly what made her plan possible. "Hyojin, what are you doing?" came the panicked voice of her communications officer. "Something they won't expect," she replied calmly, pushing her. "Engines to maximum power. Tell my family I love them." The Velthran gunners tried to target her ship, but she was moving too erratically. She spun and rolled, using debris from destroyed human vessels as cover, making herself impossible to hit with their massive weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. High Commander Veltharos watched from his bridge as the small human ship approached. "What is that vessel doing?" he demanded. "It appears to be on a collision course, Commander," reported his tactical officer. "But surely they wouldn't." Hyojin's destroyer slammed into the flagship's hangar bay at full speed. But the real surprise came 3 seconds later, when her ship's fusion reactor, which she had rigged to overload, exploded inside the alien vessel. The blast tore through bulkheads and corridors, crippling 3 entire decks. "Impossible!" Veltharos roared as his ship shuddered and alarms began blaring. No civilized species fights like this. But humanity was just getting started. Across the battlefield, similar attacks were happening everywhere. Captain Do-hyun Park rammed his cruiser into an enemy battleship's weapon array, taking out their main guns before his ship was destroyed. Commander Yujin Ko flew her fighter directly into an alien bridge, sacrificing herself to eliminate their command crew. The Valthrans had never encountered anything like this. In their 3,000 years of conquest, every species had fought. Conventionally, ships lined up, exchanged fire, and eventually the weaker force surrendered. But humans weren't following any recognizable pattern. "They're using their cargo ships as weapons," reported a Velthran sub-commander in disbelief. He was watching as human civilian vessels, loaded with mining explosives, dove into the enemy formation like guided missiles. Sung-min led his remaining fighters in a desperate attack on the enemy's supply ships. "Target their fuel tankers," he ordered. "If we can't outgun them, we'll starve them of resources." His fighters swooped between the massive alien vessels like birds attacking elephants. They were too small and fast for the big guns to track effectively, and they used every piece of space debris as cover. "Phoenix, leader, we've got enemy fighters incoming," warned his wingman, Lieutenant Min Seo Kim. "I see them," Sung-min replied. watching as sleek alien fighters poured out of the larger ships. They were faster and better armed than anything humanity had, but they flew in perfect formation, following predictable attack patterns. "Break formation and go wild," Sung-min ordered. "Don't let them guess what you're going to do next." The human fighters abandoned all military discipline, flying like pilots who had nothing left to lose. They made impossible turns, used their own damaged ships as weapons, and fought with a desperation that the Velthrans couldn't understand. Despite their courage, the human fleet was being systematically destroyed. For every alien ship they managed to damage or destroy, humanity lost dozens of their own. But something unprecedented was happening. They were actually hurting the enemy. Admiral Kyung-ho watched the battle from Earth's orbital command station as his fleet died around him. But his tactical display showed something remarkable. The alien casualty reports were unlike anything in their military history. "Sir, we're receiving surrender demands from the enemy fleet," reported his communications officer. "Ignore them," Kyung-ho replied grimly. "Signal all remaining ships. Begin Operation Last Stand." The surviving human vessels, most of them damaged, and running on backup power, formed up for one final attack. They charged directly at the alien flagship, not caring about their own survival. Lieutenant Commander Tai-hyun Bai, his ship's engines failing, managed to get close enough to the enemy command vessel to ram it with his crippled cruiser. The explosion sent shockwaves through both fleets. As Earth's orbital defenses finally fell silent, High Commander Veltharos stood amid the wreckage of his bridge, staring at casualty reports that made no sense. His fleet had won, but at a cost. That shouldn't have been possible. "Prepare for planetary bombardment," he ordered, his voice shaking with rage. As Earth's cities began to burn, the last human transmission went out to all the colonies scattered across space. Admiral Kyung-ho's final words echoed through the darkness. "We made them bleed. We showed them that humans don't die quietly. Now make them pay for every world they touch." The war had only just begun. 23 years had passed since Earth fell, and humanity had become something the galaxy had never seen before. In hidden asteroid bases and forgotten colonies on the Outer Rim, humans had learned to fight a war that the Velthran Empire couldn't understand. Dr. So Young-han worked in a secret laboratory carved deep inside an abandoned mining station. Around her, pieces of captured Velthran technology lay scattered across workbenches like puzzle pieces, waiting to be solved. Her team had been working for months to reverse engineer alien weapons and ship systems. "Doctor, we've made another breakthrough," called out her assistant, wiping grease from his hands. "We figured out how their energy shields work." So Young looked up from the alien device she was studying. "Show me." The young engineer activated a holographic display. "See, they build everything to be efficient and standardized. Same shield frequency across their entire fleet. Makes it easy for them to coordinate, but it means if we find the right frequency, we can punch through any of their shields," So Young finished, a grim smile crossing her face. "Brilliant. How long until we can modify our weapons?" "Give us 2 weeks, and every human ship will be able to cut through their defenses like paper." This was how humanity had survived. While the Empire built ships for conquest and glory, humans built them for one purpose: killing aliens. Every captured piece of technology was studied, improved, and turned into a weapon. What took the Velthrans centuries to develop, humans reverse-engineered in months. Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, Commander Dong-wook Park was leading another raid against an alien supply convoy. His small fleet of modified cargo ships emerged from the asteroid field like ghosts, their hulls painted black to blend with the darkness of space. "Remember, hit fast and disappear," he told his crews over the comm. "We're not here to fight fair. We're here to make them hurt." The Velthran convoy never saw them coming. Park's ships had been equipped with mining charges, the same explosives used to break apart asteroids. But instead of mining rocks, they were mining alien ships. "Target their fuel tankers first," Park ordered. "Without fuel, their warships become floating scrap metal." His pilots dove in like wolves attacking a herd. They attached the mining charges to the alien ships' hulls and retreated before the explosives detonated. Within minutes, the convoy was burning wreckage drifting through space. "Dong-wook to all ships," he radioed. Grab what supplies you can and get out. They'll send reinforcements soon." But before they could escape, Vaelthran fighters appeared on their sensors. Park's ships were outgunned and outnumbered, but they had learned tricks that no military academy taught. "Use the wreckage," he commanded. "Hide in the debris field and pick them off one by one." The human ships vanished into the floating maze of destroyed convoy vessels. When the alien fighters followed, they found themselves in a deadly game of hide-and-seek. Human pilots would emerge from behind a piece of wreckage, fire a quick burst, then disappear again before the enemy could return fire. Lieutenant Ji-won Lee piloted her fighter through the debris like she was born to it. She had grown up on a mining colony, flying between asteroids since she was 12 years old. This was just another day at the office for her. "Got one," she reported calmly as another alien fighter exploded behind her. Moving to the next target, the Vaelthran pilots, trained in formal combat maneuvers, couldn't adapt to this chaotic style of fighting. Within an hour, Park's ragtag fleet had eliminated an entire squadron of enemy fighters without losing a single ship. But not every battle ended in victory. On the forge world of New Seoul, Captain Hyun-soo Kang received word that a Vaelthran battle fleet was approaching his colony. He had 3,000 civilians to protect and only a handful of defensive ships. "Sir, we should evacuate," urged his second-in-command. "We can't fight a fleet that size." Hyun-soo looked out at the colony below. Families were going about their daily lives, children playing in the streets, completely unaware that death was approaching from the stars. "No," he said quietly. "We run now and they'll just hunt us down later. Besides, someone needs to make them pay for what they did to Earth." As the alien fleet entered the system, Hyun-soo activated the colony's mining systems. New Seoul had been built around massive fusion-powered mining equipment designed to break apart entire mountains. With some creative engineering, that same equipment could be turned into the largest weapon humanity had ever built. "All civilian transports, launch immediately," he ordered. "Get our people to safety." The Vaelthran fleet approached, expecting an easy conquest. They had dealt with dozens of human colonies over the past 2 decades. Most surrendered without a fight. Others put up token resistance before being overwhelmed. But as their ships entered orbit around New Seoul, Captain Hyun-soo made his final transmission to the human resistance. "Tell them we made the Empire bleed. Tell them we never knelt." He activated the mining charges buried throughout the planet's crust. New Seoul became a weapon, exploding with the force of a small star. The blast consumed the entire Vaelthran fleet, turning ships and planet alike into glowing debris. Across the galaxy, other human colonies received the message. Each one faced the same choice: submit or fight. Most chose to fight. The Vaelthran Empire, which had conquered 1,000 species through overwhelming force, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Humans didn't line up their ships for honorable battle. They hid in asteroid fields, rigged planets as bombs, and turned every civilian ship into a potential weapon. High Commander Veltharos stood in his rebuilt command center, staring at casualty reports that made no sense. His forces were winning every major battle, but they were bleeding ships and crews at an unsustainable rate. "How many more colonies do they have?" he demanded. "Our intelligence suggests at least 40 inhabited systems, sir," replied his aide. "But they keep building new bases in uncharted regions. Every time we destroy one, 2 more appear." "And our losses?" The aide hesitated. "We've lost more ships fighting humans than we lost conquering the previous 50 species combined." Veltharos turned to look at the star charts, showing human territory. What had started as a simple police action had become a grinding war that was consuming resources across the Empire. "Double our fleet strength in human space," he ordered. "If they want to fight like animals, we'll treat them like animals." But in the hidden bases scattered throughout the Outer Rim, humanity was preparing for the next phase of their war. They had learned to fight. Now they were learning to hunt. The Empire was about to discover what happened when you cornered Earth's children and gave them nothing left to lose. Admiral Seok Jin-yoon stood in the command center of humanity's newest battleship, the Retribution, studying star charts that had cost hundreds of lives to obtain. The holographic display showed the heart of Vaelthran space. Systems that had never seen war, worlds that had lived in peace for thousands of years under the Empire's protection. "Intelligence Officer Ji-Hae Kang," he called out. "Show me what?" We learned from the captured data cores. Ji-Hae activated the main display, revealing detailed scans of the Vylthran home systems. "Admiral, this changes everything. Their core worlds have no defenses, no orbital platforms, no patrol fleets, nothing." "That's impossible," said Captain Minho Park, leaning forward to study the data. "An empire this size must protect its home territory." "That's just it," Ji-Hae explained. "They've never needed to. For 3,000 years, no enemy has ever gotten close to their core systems. They've always fought on the borders, conquering outward. The idea of defending their homeworld has never occurred to them." Admiral Seok Jin felt something cold settle in his stomach. 30 years of war had taught humanity terrible lessons about survival. They had learned that sometimes, to protect what you love, you have to become something worse than your enemies. How? "Many civilians live in these core systems?" he asked quietly. "Approximately 50 billion across 12 worlds," Ji-Hae replied. "Most of them have never even seen a weapon, let alone experienced war." The command center fell silent. Every person in the room understood what they were looking at. The Vylthran Empire had built its power on the assumption that no one would ever strike back at their heart. They had been wrong. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Da-Hai Lim, "we're receiving reports from our scout ships. The Empire is massing another fleet to attack our remaining colonies. They're calling it the Final Solution Fleet." Admiral Seok Jin nodded grimly. "How long do we have?" 6 months before they're ready to launch a systematic extermination of every human world." He looked around at his officers. These weren't the same people who had fought the first battle over Earth 30 years ago. War had changed them, hardened them into something the old humanity wouldn't recognize. "Then we have 6 months to end this war," he said. "Prepare the fleet for deep space insertion. We're going to show the Empire what happens when you try to genocide the wrong species." 2 months later, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace in the Zaltharon system, home to the Vylthran capital world. The planet below was a paradise of crystal spires and floating cities, untouched by war for millennia. "Admiral, we're detecting orbital traffic control signals," reported the sensor operator. "They're treating us like a lost merchant convoy. They have no idea we're hostile." "Maintain the deception as long as possible," Seok Jin ordered. "All ships prepare for Operation Reckoning." On the planet's surface, Emperor Zalthuros was meeting with his High Council when the first explosions lit up the sky. Through the palace windows, they could see strange ships diving toward the surface like falling stars. "What is happening?" the Emperor demanded. "Unknown vessels are attacking the orbital stations," reported his aide, panic creeping into his voice. "Our defense grid is not responding. It wasn't designed to repel an attack from inside the system." The palace shook as human strike teams, led by Marine Commander Wu Jin Lee, blasted through the outer defenses. These weren't the desperate fighters who had died over Earth decades ago. These were soldiers forged in 30 years of guerrilla warfare, each one an expert in violence. Commander Wu Jin's team moved through the palace corridors like shadows. The Vylthran guards, trained for ceremony rather than combat, fell before them like wheat before a scythe. "Secure the throne room," Wu Jin ordered into his comm. "Priority target is the Emperor. We need him alive." Emperor Zalthuros watched in horror as his elite guards were systematically eliminated by creatures he had considered primitive savages. When the humans finally reached his throne room, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "This is impossible," he gasped as Commander Wu Jin approached him. "We are the Empire. We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. You cannot do this to us." Wu Jin's scarred face showed no emotion. He had lost his entire family when Earth burned. His expression was that of a man who had nothing left to lose and nothing left to prove. "You are the Empire," he replied coldly. "We are what comes after." Across the capital city, human forces were systematically dismantling the government infrastructure. They moved with surgical precision, targeting military command centers, communication hubs, and political leadership. This wasn't random destruction. It was the careful elimination of the Empire's ability to function. In orbit above the planet, Admiral Seok Jin received reports from strike teams across the system. Admiral, we've secured the primary shipyards. Intelligence Officer Kang's team has accessed their strategic databases. We now have complete fleet positions for the entire Empire. And the Emperor? In custody, sir. Commander Lee reports the capital has fallen. Seok-jin looked out at the burning city below. He felt no satisfaction, no joy in victory. This was simply what needed to be done to ensure humanity's survival. Signal all human forces, he ordered. Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2. Across Valthran space, similar attacks were occurring simultaneously. Human task forces, using captured Imperial ships and stolen access codes, struck at industrial worlds, military academies, and government centers. The Empire's vast communication network carried reports of disaster from dozens of systems. High Commander Veltharos, still commanding the final solution fleet at the border of human space, received the impossible news with disbelief. Sir, we're losing contact with the core worlds, his communications officer reported. The capital has gone dark. Zaltharos Prime is under attack. The shipyards at Kethvar have been destroyed. Turn the fleet around, Veltharos ordered. Emergency jump to the capital system. But when his fleet arrived, they found the Zaltharon system in chaos. Human ships controlled the orbital space, and the surface of the capital world was burning. This is High Commander Veltharos, he broadcast to the human fleet. I demand to speak with your commanding officer. Admiral Seok-jin's face appeared on the communication screen. Veltharos recognized him as one of the human officers from the early battles, but he was different now, harder, colder. I am Admiral Seok-jin Yoon of the Terran Defense Fleet, he said. Your emperor is our prisoner. Your capital has fallen. Your empire is finished. You cannot hold what you have taken, Veltharos replied. We are still the stronger force. You? Seok-jin asked. Your industrial base is destroyed. Your command structure is eliminated. Your core worlds are defenseless. What exactly makes you stronger? For the first time in his long military career, Veltharos had no answer. Surrender your fleet, Admiral Seok-jin continued, and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue fighting and we will demonstrate why humanity survived when your empire thought we were already dead. As Veltharos looked at his tactical displays, he realized the terrible truth. The hunters had become the hunted. The empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds was now at the mercy of the species they had tried to exterminate. The war was about to enter its final phase. The war's end came not with surrender, but with humanity's final lesson to the galaxy about the price of trying to exterminate Earth's children. Dr. Eun-soo Kim stood in her research facility, watching as her team made the final adjustments to captured Valthran's stellar manipulation technology. Doctor, the calculations are complete, reported her assistant, his voice trembling slightly. The device will work exactly as planned. Yoon-soo stared at the massive machine before her. The Valthrans had created this technology to reshape solar systems, to move planets and create new worlds for their empire. But 30 years of war had taught humanity to see weapons where others saw tools. Are you certain about the targeting coordinates? She asked. Yes, ma'am, the Veltharan system. Population 8 billion. Primary industrial center for their remaining fleet production. Yoon-soo closed her eyes for a moment. 8 billion lives. But she remembered Earth burning, remembered the billions of humans who had died when the Empire decided her species should be extinct. Proceed with the operation, she ordered. Across the galaxy, Admiral Hyunjun Shin stood on the bridge of humanity's newest dreadnought, the Final Dawn. Through the viewport, he could see the Veltharan star, a massive yellow sun that had warmed alien worlds for billions of years. Admiral, all ships report ready, said his tactical officer. Dr. Kim's device is in position. Signal the planet below, Shin ordered. Give them one final warning. The transmission went out to every communication device on the world below. Shin's voice, cold and emotionless, echoed through alien cities where millions were going about their daily lives. People of Veltharan, this is Admiral Hyunjun Shin of the human fleet. Your empire tried to exterminate my species. You failed. Now you will learn what extinction truly means. You have 1 hour to evacuate to the outer system. After that, your star dies. On the planet's surface, Panic spread like wildfire. The alien population had lived in peace for thousands of years. Most had never seen a human, never understood what their empire had been doing on the distant borders of space. "This is impossible," gasped the planetary governor as he watched the evacuation reports. "They cannot destroy a star. No technology exists that could—" His words were cut off as Dr. Yunsu's device activated. The stellar manipulation beam, designed to move planets and create new solar systems, instead began destabilizing the nuclear reactions at the star's core. The Veltharan sun flickered like a candle in the wind. Admiral Shin watched through protective filters as the star began to collapse. The process was slow at first, then accelerated rapidly. Within 6 hours, the massive fusion reactor that had burned for billions of years went dark forever. "Jump to the next system," he ordered. "Prepare for Kethvar operation." Across Veltharan space, the pattern repeated. One by one, the Empire's core systems watched their suns flicker and die. Planets that had known warmth for millions of years suddenly found themselves freezing in eternal night. High Commander Veltharos, still commanding, what remained of the Imperial fleet, received the reports with growing horror. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Zethmaran system," his communications officer reported. "Long-range sensors show their star has gone dark." "How many systems is that now?" 17, sir. 17 stars that no longer exist." Veltharos stared at the tactical display showing the slow death of his civilization. The humans weren't just defeating the Empire, they were erasing it from existence. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he ordered. Admiral Shin's scarred face appeared on the screen. Behind him, Veltharos could see the bridge of a human warship. It looked nothing like the desperate vessels that had fought over Earth decades ago. This was the product of 30 years of warfare, built by a species that had learned to survive by becoming more dangerous than their enemies. "I wish to discuss terms," Veltharos said. "There are no terms," Shin replied. "Your empire chose to make this a war of extermination. We're simply better at it than you are." "You're committing genocide on a scale never seen in galactic history," Veltharos protested. "Billions of innocent lives." "Were you concerned about innocent lives when you burned Earth?" Shin interrupted. "Were you thinking about children? When you decided humanity should be extinct?" The communication channel fell silent for a long moment. "What do you want?" Veltharos finally asked. "We want every species in this galaxy to understand a simple truth," Shin said. "Humanity will never kneel. We will never surrender. And if you try to destroy us, we will turn your stars to cinders." Meanwhile, Communications Officer Da-Hai Lim was broadcasting humanity's message to every world that had once been part of the Veltharan Empire. Her transmission reached hundreds of species across thousands of systems. "Former vassals of the Empire," she announced, "the power that demanded your submission is ash. You are free to govern yourselves as you see fit. But remember, we are still here. We will not conquer you, but we will not allow anyone else to conquer us." On worlds across the galaxy, alien populations received the message with mixed emotions. Some celebrated their liberation from imperial rule. Others watched the dying stars in former Veltharan space and wondered if humanity had become something worse than their former oppressors. In the ruins of the Veltharan capital, Commander Tai Hyun planted humanity's flag in the frozen ground. The planet's star had died 3 days earlier, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. Soon this world would be nothing but ice and silence. But the flag wasn't planted as a symbol of conquest. It was planted as a warning. Emperor Zalthuros, now a prisoner in human custody, watched from the window of his cell as his homeworld died around him. The crystal spires and floating cities of his capital were already covered in frost. "Why?" he asked Commander Bay. "You've won. Why continue the destruction?" Bay looked at the alien ruler with no sympathy in his eyes. "Because the galaxy needs to remember what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness. Every species out there needs to understand that humanity is not to be threatened with extinction." As the last Veltharan fleet surrendered, Admiral Shin stood in his command center, looking at reports from across human space. The surviving colonies were beginning to rebuild. New settlements were being established on worlds abandoned by the dying empire. But humanity had changed. The species that had once reached for the stars with hope and wonder had become something harder, colder. They had learned that in a galaxy full of predators, the only way to protect what you loved was to become the most dangerous predator of. "All, sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we're receiving diplomatic inquiries from 17 different species. They all want to establish peaceful relations with humanity." Shin nodded. "Respond to all of them. Tell them we welcome peaceful contact with any species that comes in friendship, but also make sure they understand. We are still here. We are still watching, and we remember everything. The Valthran Empire was finished, its stars turned to cinders, its worlds frozen in eternal night. But humanity lived on, spreading across the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guardians. They had refused to kneel, and in doing so they had ensured that no species would ever again face the choice between submission and extinction. The children of Earth had taught the galaxy a lesson written in the ashes of dead stars. Some things are worth any price to defend, and some species should never be cornered. In the end, humanity didn't just survive. They had made sure that freedom itself would survive with them.